Welcome. Today is the story of the world's biggest ship, the sinking of the Titanic. Today's beautiful B1 story is through the eyes of the violin player Wallace Hartley. It was around midnight. In the dark ocean, nobody saw the big black mountain of ice. But they felt it. They felt it in their bones, in the feeling at the bottom of their stomachs. Wallace Hartley was a violinist, and he played in the first-class lounge. He didn't see the iceberg either. While he played, plates and knives suddenly vibrated. The ship made a loud sound, groaned. Lights went off, then on again. A passenger joked that he needed more ice in his whiskey. "Icebergs? I need more ice in this whiskey." People laughed, and the party continued. Wallace Hartley stepped outside. He saw his own breath in the icy night. Drunk passengers played football with pieces of ice that had fallen on the deck. They kicked the ice, laughing while holding glasses of wine. Wallace boarded the Titanic at Southampton, England. It was a beautiful spring day in April 1912. He had seen beautiful ships before, but nothing like this. The Titanic was a floating city, longer than any ship ever built before. She held over 2,000 people. Wallace carried his new violin, a gift from his fiancée, Maria. He found his room in the second-class cabins. Wallace was 33 years old. He led an 8-man band. They played on cruise ships all over Europe. So Wallace Hartley played with his band in the first-class lounge, where millionaires drank champagne. The rich and famous walked up and down a grand staircase. Above them was a magnificent glass dome with crystal chandeliers all around it. But most of the passengers were third class. Third class, the poorer families, Irish, Italians, Swedish, immigrants. So immigrants on their way to America to start a new life. These families, they were crowded on the lower floors below. They were not allowed on the top decks where the richer people were. So Wallace didn't see them often. One evening, Wallace drank with the ship's officers. "God himself cannot sink this ship," proudly said one. Another officer, he said there was only enough lifeboats for 1,000 people, as they didn't need any more. On the fourth night, the sea was calm and black as glass. The ocean was endless. The millions of stars above were so clear, the kind of beauty that reminds you of how small we are. The temperature was below freezing. But inside the first-class lounge, where there was a warm fire, Wallace's band played jazz. and the people, they danced and laughed. The smell of cigars and French perfume filled the air. At 11:40 p.m., Wallace felt it, a shudder, low and strange. The lights flickered on, off, on, off. Plates and forks on the table vibrated. Walls groaned. A groan is like a sound like... Whoa. The walls groaned, and the wine in Wallace's glass moved to the side and then back again. But the passengers laughed, keeping the spirits high, and the ship sailed forwards and onwards. Wallace saw that some crew members walked away quickly, like whispering to each other. One of them ran into the corridor. 20 minutes later, loud bells and whistles sounded. Ding, 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 ding. Crew knocked on cabin doors and shouted orders. The message was clear. Ding, 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 ding. Ready the lifeboats. Wake the passengers. Women and children first. Wallace, he remembered what he heard talking to the officers. He knew the horrible truth. There were not enough lifeboats for everyone. We keep playing, Wallace said. Let's keep them calm. The band played on. Just after midnight, the first lifeboats lowered. Only 28 people were in the boat that had space for 65. Many people didn't believe the danger, and some women did not want to leave their husbands. The ship still looked safe and strong. All the lights were still on. Wallace and his band, they moved outside and played on the deck so more people could hear. Then the front of the ship was dipping a little bit deeper with each passing song. The crew fired rockets into the sky. The light exploded against the stars, beautiful and desperate. Another rocket. More silence. The surrounding sea was empty. The Titanic was all alone. At 1 a.m., the panic began. The third-class passengers who had been told to wait down below, they had finally pushed their way up the stairs. But the gates at the top were locked. Men desperately shouted in foreign languages. The crew didn't understand them. Families, they were all trapped below as the water climbed higher and higher. Mothers passed babies through the locked gates to anyone who would take them. By the time the gate was finally unlocked, they all ran out onto the deck. But it was too late for many on the lower decks. The deck tilted. 15 degrees, then 20. Wallace saw chairs sliding down the deck. the cello player of the band, Roger Bricou. He stopped playing. "The boats are all gone." Roger looked at the dark water. "All of them." The young bass player, he spoke next. "Let's try the front of the ship. Maybe there are more boats." The band hesitated. Wallace, he could see it in their eyes. The animal pull of survival, of wanting to survive. That desperate look in his bandmate's eyes. And he felt it too. Wallace remembered his fiancée, Maria. Her laugh, her letters, the violin in his hands, her gift. He had told her he would return. Now the deck was complete chaos. Hundreds were still on board. People were praying, children were crying, groups of people shouting escape plans to one another. "Let's go this way, I think the ship's at the back." Everyone running around in every direction. Wallace lowered his violin and he looked at his bandmates. Their faces were all white as ghosts. "Gentlemen," he said, it has been an honor to play with you tonight." Roger nodded. He shook Wallace's hand, and the other bandmates all shook hands together, tight jaws. And one by one, the bandmates, they all walked away, and they disappeared into the crowd. And Wallace stood there, alone. He looked around at the old man praying on his knees, a woman holding a photograph to her heart. If Wallace ran, he would be just another body in the panic. But if he stayed, he could give the people something. He could give the people hope. He could remind them of heaven, of home, of something bigger than fear. The deck groaned beneath him. Now the tilt was over 20 degrees. The back of the boat started rising high. The lights flickered on and then off and then on, and then half the ship lost power. It was just dark. Then Wallace remembered the song that Maria loved, the one they sang in church together, a song about climbing closer to God in even the darkest times. Wallace put his violin back onto his shoulder, and Wallace began to play his violin. The violin's sound rose thin and fragile into the starry night. Then a beautiful note sounded, a lower note, in perfect harmony. The cello player, Bricou, had rejoined him. And Wallace, he didn't have to look behind him to know the others were all joining in too. He could hear them. His bandmates were all there. Each of them joined in the song, one by one, just music under the stars. These men had chosen their final act. All the chaos around them and disappeared. The screaming passengers, the cracking wood, the rising water. An elderly couple sat in front of them. The husband smiled while holding his wife's arm. They both quietly sang along with the song. Wallace saw a woman sat on a bench, and she held the bench tight. Her eyes were closed, and her lips were moving with the words of the song. She sat alone, but in her heart, she was not alone. Wallace looked into the first-class lounge. There he saw 3 gentlemen, wonderfully dressed in suits, and they were saying cheers, holding cigars, holding glasses of whiskey. The music swelled. The 8 instruments all playing together. Wallace looked at the front of the ship. The water was closer now. He could see it, black and unforgiving. The black water climbed the deck and moved towards them. It swallowed a bench, then a doorway. At 2:17 a.m., all lights went out. They were now in complete darkness. The back of the Titanic rose high into the sky, impossibly high, nearly vertical, and hung there for a long, terrible moment. Then the ship cracked into 2 with a sound like thunder. The front half of the ship sank deep under the waves. Then the back of the ship, it bobbed up and bobbed down, then went up again for a final moment. Then it slid beneath the surface. And just like that, the biggest ever ship was gone. The voices in the water were loud. Hundreds of people shouting, calling for help. After just a few minutes, the voices grew quieter. One by one, the voices stopped. Wallace Hartley was now floating in the water. Cold was beyond pain. He tried to move his arms. Nothing. The cold had taken his body piece by piece. First his feet, then his hands, and now his arms and legs couldn't move. The cold shocked his system. He floated and waited. Only a few people were still making sounds now. Wallace's violin was tied to his chest. Maria's gift. He thought of her face, her smile. Somewhere far away, he heard a whistle blowing. An officer trying to gather survivors. Wallace tried to call out, but his voice was just a whisper. His lips were too cold to move. He heard something, a voice, soft and warm. The cold no longer hurt. Wallace closed his eyes, and Wallace Hartley let go. Over 1,500 souls went down with the Titanic. 1 week later, a passing ship found Wallace Hartley. his violin was still strapped to his chest. Hartley's funeral was in his hometown of Colne in England. 40,000 people lined the streets to honor him. The violin was given back to his fiancée, Maria. She never remarried. She kept her husband's violin. Sometimes she would hold it closely to her chest, just like Wallace had held it on that cold April night in 1912. This story is based on true events, but it's been adapted for English learning, and some details have been fictionalized, for we can never truly know what Wallace said, heard, nor felt. Have a beautiful day and week full of peace, love, sunshine, and inspiration.